this episode of 10-8, Special Investigations Unit Commander Lieutenant Charlie Scavuzzo will join us in the studio to discuss efforts being made in combating drugs and gangs in St. Lucie County. Don't go away, we'll be right back.
Welcome to 10-8, your inside view of the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office. I'm your host, Sergeant Chris Ciccio. Today our guest is Lieutenant Charlie Scavuzzo. He's the watch commander of the Special Investigations Unit. Lieutenant, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Tell us about yourself and your career, how you got started in law enforcement.
I've been in law enforcement for 23 years. When I first started, I was a Fort Pierce police officer for about 3.5 years. After that, I got the opportunity to come with the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office, and I've been with the Sheriff's Office for about 19 years.
And what different roles have you fulfilled in the Sheriff's Office?
I've been assigned to Road Patrol, Special Investigations as an investigator, Criminal Investigation Division. Been a sergeant on the road, a sergeant in narcotics, and now I'm a lieutenant in narcotics.
And the Special Investigations Unit, exactly what is the focus of that unit? What is your role within the Sheriff's Office?
Primarily we investigate narcotic-related crime.
Mm-hmm. And how big is that problem that you guys are facing now?
It's a constant problem that's always affects every community. We investigate daily. We probably make about 800 to 1,000 cases a year.
Wow, that's pretty significant. Now, this is county-wide, both cities, Port St. Lucie, Fort Pierce, and unincorporated county you guys work in?
Yes, sir. We work in both city limits and in the unincorporated part of the county.
Now, do you also work in conjunction with those other police agencies as well, maybe special task forces and things of that nature?
Yep. We're active participants in several task forces. We're a federal task force. We have guys that are on Marshal Service, DEA task force, FBI task force. We work with all state agencies, FDLE, and local agencies on a daily basis.
All right. Now, how is your unit made up? You've got yourself, obviously, other supervisors. How many detectives? How's the unit structured?
We have 4 supervisors, including myself, 3 sergeants. 1 sergeant's in charge of long-term investigations, another sergeant's in charge of street crimes operations, and a 3rd sergeant's in charge of auto theft and fugitive warrants.
Okay.
We have a total of 14 other investigators assigned to the unit, along with 2 canines, narcotic detection dogs.
Okay. And it's pretty much a 24/7 operation, I'm sure.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Now, tell us the life involved of being a narcotics investigator. It's probably not like the old, Miami Vice glamorous type of event that we used to see back in the 1980s on television. You don't drive around in a Ferrari Daytona Spider, for example, and you probably don't have a 38-foot cigarette boat. But tell us about the life that you guys are involved with, what you do, being on call, what it does to affect your family.
Well, it's definitely not Miami Vice. It's a very stressful job. It takes a unique individual to perform the duties of a narcotics investigator. You work, and not only the investigator, it's also their family. Mm-hmm. It takes hours a day. You leave your house at 7 in the morning. You may not come back for 2 days. You're subject to call out. You get called constantly. Sleepless nights, your wife, yourself, your family. Everybody sacrifices when you're a narcotic investigator.
My understanding in narcotics is that drug dealers know no jurisdiction. They don't understand jurisdictional boundaries. Are there times where you and your people have to go outside of St. Lucie County to effect the arrest or to conduct an investigation of somebody who's moving drugs?
On a daily basis. We wake up in St. Lucie County. We may go to sleep in Dade County.
Wow.
We travel all over the state. East Coast, West Coast. We have other people come from other states that we do narcotic traffic deals.
Now, do these events start to lead to task forces that have to be built now where you've got federal agents involved and maybe deputy sheriffs who are deputized marshals or deputized in the DEA system, for example, to be able to work those cases that might transcend county boundaries, even state boundaries?
Absolutely. We have officers that are designated on DEA task force and FBI task force, ICE, customs officers, and every day on a daily basis we use those to our best advantage to get the narcotic trafficker.
Right. Now, tell us about some of the dangers involved. I mean, law enforcement itself is a dangerous profession, but working with special investigations, it's got to be that much more dangerous. Tell us about some of the threats that you guys face when you're out there.
Well, some of the people you deal with, they're under the influence of narcotics, so they're not thinking in a good mental state of mind. Their frame of mind is different from us. It's altered. They may not be violent when they're regular off narcotics, but when they're on narcotics, they may be a violent person.
So the tendencies tend to rise more as a result of their narcotics use. Maybe their inhibitions are lowered, as a result of that use, so you face that threat.
Absolutely.
Now, I want to kind of get into the mind, and I'm sure our viewers want to kind of get into the mind of an SIU agent who gets called out at 3 o'clock in the morning, and you guys have to rally up at some location, get a briefing, and you've got to go, do a search warrant on a house. What goes through your mind in those instances where, you get those calls and you've been woken out of a deep sleep, taken away from your family? What are your thoughts in those moments?
Well, you've been a narcotics officer yourself. We're a loose bunch of people. We try to have a good time with things. We try to find humor in our job so that we keep our sanity. But when it's time to go to work, we go to work. We put our game face on. We make sure all our I's are dotted, all our T's are crossed. We make sure that we stack the deck, so to speak, to make our best advantage. We have to think every scenario 3-4 different ways, and we have to make sure we come up with a proper game plan that all of our guys are going to go home safe, plus the bad guy's going to go home safe. We have to make sure we have taken accountability what they're going to do with their reaction. So.
Right. So there's a lot of forethought that goes into these events before you do a search warrant, do a special operation, not just for the safety, as you said, of your own personnel, but for the safety of the public and that of the individual that you're seeking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We have to take all that into consideration before we even get an op plan together.
And then while that game plan's unfolding, a tremendous amount of adrenaline, running into somebody's house on a search warrant probably evokes a certain amount of adrenaline on your part, and that's something that you have to take into consideration as well. So a lot of thought process.
And you need to know how to control it, because everyone who's reacting with adrenaline, you know how it can run away with you. You have to keep it under control at all times.
Wow, that's very interesting. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue speaking with Lieutenant Scavuzzo about special investigations and narcotics operations in St. Lucie County. Don't go away.
What's that used for?
They sell these in convenience store as roses. We call them stem because it's a long stem rose. What the crack cocaine user will do is take the rose out, uncap this, and take Chore Boy or metallic scrubber. They'll make a little plug, they'll stick it in here, and this is what they smoke their crack out of. Have you ever bought one of these?
Never.
You don't give these to your wives?
Nope.
Wife, girlfriend, nothing like that? No? I can't say I've ever seen anybody buy one of these for any other reason.
Why you asking me that? Why you asking me that?
Because he don't know any better, bro. You and I are always out here, right?
And he don't know.
Right? He don't know. I gotta educate him on it, right?
Selling right out of the garage here. So all the neighbors, when they call the office raising hell about all the traffic around here, there's justification.
Welcome back to 10-8. We have been speaking with Lieutenant Scavuzzo of the Special Investigations Unit, learning about narcotics investigations that take place in St. Lucie County. Now, there's a stigma that's out there in the community that Fort Pierce is the hub of all narcotics problems in the area. That's not necessarily true, is it?
No, not at all.
Tell us about the problems that we have, and remind our viewers that this is a community-wide, if not state, nationwide problem, not just a problem that's isolated to one area.
Absolutely. Every community in the United States deal with some type of drug problem. Whether it's street level narcotics transfers or prescription drug problems, every community in the United States deals with the problem.
So pretty much, and again for the benefit of our viewers, that you might have street level dealing in one area of the community, but in another area of the community that may be more affluent, they could be traveling to that area to get it and bring it back. They could be literally having a grow house within their community and still not know it, but it's not isolated to one spot.
Oh, correct. It's transient. It travels all over from the richest community to the poorest communities.
And as we talked about earlier with the jurisdictional boundaries, that the investigations, they travel all over the state and sometimes the United States. It's realistic to expect that it's going to be throughout our community as well.
Absolutely.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the drugs and the relationship to violence, which is something that you guys also face when you do your search warrants. How do the drugs lead to the violence within the community?
They go hand in hand. Drugs equal money, money equals greed, greed equals crime. And when that's the cycle it goes.
Now, my understanding is, Lieutenant, that the majority, 99.9% of the people, and we're focusing in on Fort Pierce for just a moment, are hardworking people that do the right thing, that abide by the law, and it's a very, very small percentage of people that are actually out there selling drugs and creating the violence. Has that been your experience?
Oh, absolutely. People in those areas don't want the drugs and they don't want to be bothered with it. They don't want the crime that comes along with it. They want to be able to live their life without any fear from being a victim.
Right, absolutely. Now let's talk a minute about the relationship between drugs and violence. Tell us about that. I've seen in my career, I've seen several homicides over narcotics, several robberies over stealing narcotics,
several people conducted home invasions to break into someone's house to get money for narcotics. It all goes hand in hand. It's a vicious cycle, and we have to do our best to control it.
Now, the sheriff, since his initial term in office, going back to the early 2000s, has committed himself to a summer operation that Special Investigations plays a major role in. Tell us about that.
Yep, since Sheriff Mascara got elected, his focus has been he wants people to live without fear. So he conducts a high visibility, proactive operation each year with assistance from Fort Pierce Police Department and to combat street crimes, drugs, violence in the northwest section of Fort Pierce and other areas in the county, Silver Lake Estates and those areas. He wants people to live in the community without having to be victimized. He wants somebody to sit on their front porch and not have to worry about being shot when a drive-by. He wants a high visibility presence so people can live their life and not be a victim.
And through that high visibility presence, how many arrests do we average, ballpark, make a year in this summer operation?
For summer operation, we probably average about 400 people a year arrested for different crimes, from misdemeanors to all the way to homicides. We've had our experience in several things. It slows down a little bit with the introduction of gangs. Now we have a little bit more street violence up, a lot of robberies, car chases, and stuff like that. But for the most part, it stays steady.
Now, do you seize quite a few weapons during this operation as well and get those off the street? We
average probably about 100 weapons a year, handguns specifically. We've got everything from 22s to AK-47s, full automatic rifles.
And is Special Investigations the only unit of the Sheriff's Office that participates in this, or does it take people from all over the agency?
It's a agency philosophy. We have people work from Traffic Division that help us, K-9 Division that help us, Road Patrol that help us. It's a mentality across the entire Sheriff's Office.
And is it just isolated to the Sheriff's Office, or do the other police agencies within St. Lucie County participate as well?
Fort Pierce Police Department help us out each year. Each year they assign about 5 investigators and a supervisor. And they're there hand in hand with us as we do it.
Wow, sounds like a big collaborative process. All right, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we'll continue speaking with Lieutenant Scavuzzo, learning more about the Special Investigations Unit as we start to deal with gangs and gang problems that take place in St. Lucie County. Don't go away.
We want to go after the hierarchy of the gang. We want to take them down to leaders so we can cut off the head of the snake, basically.
As a result of ongoing criminal acts in our community, some time ago I directed our Special Investigation Unit to target violent career criminals. And what you see before you is a result of just 3 recent cases that they worked. You mix guns, money, and drugs, and our community is suffering dire consequences, and we're here to put a stop to it.
Welcome back to 10-8. We have been speaking with Lieutenant Scavuzzo of the Special Investigations Unit, learning about narcotics in St. Lucie County, and now we're transitioning into the gang problems that you're facing. Are there gangs in St. Lucie County?
Yes, sir.
And what kind of gang problems are you dealing with right now?
We deal with a variety of gang problems. Just like every community, that gangs are starting to creep around from community to community. We have just started a new initiative at the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office. It's called the Gang Intelligence Team, which is a department-wide philosophy. We have members from the jail, patrol, criminal investigation, school resource, and our unit. We work together to combat gang activity, identify them, set up their infrastructures, and see how we can investigate them to take them apart.
So, meaning gang intelligence team, you're gathering information, enforcement if necessary, but the main focus is gathering information as to how they're structured, who they're structured with, what their focuses are, where they like to hang out at, what they like to do, things like that?
Absolutely. We do several operations out there to suppress crime. We normally get for lack of a better word, the soldiers of the operation. We'll go out there, we'll target them with street level narcotics, video buys, and stuff like that, and we'll make cases against them. And then we have to work our way up the line. We want to go after the hierarchy of the gang. We want to take them down to leaders so we can cut off the head of the snake, basically.
Right,
So,
gotcha. Now, do we prosecute gang members differently based on what they do?
Absolutely. There's some crimes that have enhancements for gang activity. If you're a documented gang member and you get caught committing a crime, you'll serve more of a penalty.
Now, recently there was a search warrant that you had participated in where you had uncovered a gang Bible. Can you tell our viewers what a gang Bible is and how significant of a find that is?
Basically what it is, it's the gang's standard operating procedure. It documents their membership, their language, their hierarchy, and in some instances, even the crimes they committed.
So a complete record, if you will, of who the gang is, what they do, probably able to match that up to crimes that have been committed. Is that pretty much what it does?
Absolutely. It's basically a confession of what they've done, how they committed the crimes, and what they're expecting to go for in the future.
And is that typical of gangs to have something of that nature with them?
We've heard about it. We've never found one. This is the first time we found it. This gang happened to be leaked to the Bloods, so it was a great find.
Wow, sounds like a significant find, and also it sounds like they kind of operate very similar to the policies and procedures of even the sheriff's office, where we've got mandates and orders and things that we have to follow by, and it sounds like the gangs are pretty much structured the same way.
Correct. They all have to go through the hierarchy. Absolutely.
Now let's transition a little bit, Lieutenant, and talk about some of the things that our viewers can pay attention to that would be indicative of criminal activity or even drug activity in their neighborhood. What things do you want the community to report to you so that you can investigate?
Anything out of the ordinary. They live in their neighborhoods. They know their neighborhoods better than anybody else. So if they all of a sudden they see a lot of in and out traffic, someone coming to the house and staying for a few minutes and leaving right away, speeding off, and then all of a sudden a few minutes later you have another person drive up, you start noticing a little bit of influx of maybe money from your neighbor, new cars, jewelry, clothing, all these small telltale signs that something is just not right. Somebody's doing something they may not want to be, should be doing.
Right. And just because a person reports, and this is a challenge that we face within crime prevention, that just because a person calls and reports doesn't necessarily mean that criminal activity is taking place. It's simply just information that you can look into. If no crime is being committed, as we would say, no harm, no foul, those people continue on with their lives. But if people don't report it, then we have nothing to investigate, nothing to look into, and we can't combat crime, certainly, without community involvement.
Correct. That's what our job is. Our job is to investigate crime. You know, there's some people out there that have their own agendas. But when we get a tip from anybody, no matter who it is, we have to establish our own probable cause to go after and determine whether there is a crime being committed. Yeah. If we don't find that, then it's basically closed, and we'll keep it on the back burner. We'll keep looking at it. If we have more information, we'll continue with it. But if it's not, there are instances that some people are jealous or vengeful.
Right. Now, within St. Lucie County, and we're going back a number of years where we had a lot of grow houses that were uncovered. Specifically, what can people look for with regards to a grow house?
Grow houses, it's ever changing because we educate the criminal each time when we do, when we start finding a bunch of them, they'll change their procedure.
Right, and we certainly don't want to educate them with the show either, but things that you would be looking for.
Basically, houses kept, doesn't seem like people live in there. The shades always drawn, air conditioning clicking on and off quite a few times during the day, high fences. There's a lot of telltale signs about those also. Mostly coming and going at weird hours. Our last grow house we just did, the gentleman would just strictly pull into the driveway, go into the garage, and close the garage immediately behind him. He wouldn't even exit his vehicle until the garage was closed. We determined it was a grow house. We discovered 100 plants, and it was an operation that has been involved for about 2-3 years.
Now, ultimately, and to bring the finality of the drug problem and even the violence problem in St. Lucie County, let's talk about the end result of drug dealers and gang members. What ultimately happens to these people? And we're talking beyond arrest. What ultimately is their outcome?
In my experience, it's either prison or death. One thing criminals have to remember is that they have to be right every time, every deal, every situation. Law enforcement has to be right once, and the odds are stacked in our favor to win.
Right. Well, Lieutenant, I want to thank you so much for being on the show. A lot of good information that you have given us and our viewers about the incredible work that you and your unit does. We wish you safety as you continue on in fighting this battle. It is a never-ending battle, but something that we certainly are committed to make sure that we deal with in the future. So thank you for coming today.
Thank you, Chris.
For more information on the Special Investigations Unit, you can contact the St. Lucie County Sheriff's Office at 871-5303 or visit us at stluciesheriff.com. On behalf of Sheriff Ken Mascara and the many dedicated men and women serving you in law enforcement today, we thank you for watching. Until next time, stay safe.